Welcome to Take Note Podcast. My name is Ananda Murari. I'm along with my co-host, as normal, Keli Ananda, and we're
There's
very
nothing
happy
normal
today.
about me.
It's nothing normal about him, but that I'm around him is hopefully becoming more and more of a normal thing. And we're the Take Note Podcast, and the Take Note Podcast really our vision and mission is really to connect to the artistry of devotion. And to connect to that the beauty that creative expression has in our spiritual practice, and all the things that come up for us as creatives, as thinkers, as spiritual, journeymen, journey women, journey people, as we move through our path and try and discover the most essential things about the world around us. And today we are joined by my dear friend Tim Kenty. I met Tim about 4 years ago. We were figuring out, it must have been 4 years ago, like 2016. And I was at a rainbow gathering, actually.
What's a rainbow gathering? Please explain.
A rainbow gathering, for those that aren't in the, I mean, they do happen worldwide, but just in case, it is a organization that that does not organize gatherings of.
It's an illegal gathering.
Not illegal. It's it's like a nuanced understanding of the law, but yeah, it's since like 1972. People have been gathering in the woods in the middle of the summer, national parks, to try and connect to the higher ideals of connecting with Earth, connecting with each other. And so about every year there are, about 1,000 to up to 20,000, probably in its peak, people from all sorts of backgrounds gathering in the forest, setting up camps. There's a lot of song, there's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of other things going on. And it's been historically a place for a lot of seekers to go. And we had gone there 4 years ago doing a Krishna camp, and it was actually a very blissful experience. We had set up a really beautiful kirtan tent, and we had a fire going, and we were doing kirtan till midnight. And it was at that moment actually that Tim came, and that's when we had first met. And I actually met him first through his art of storytelling, which I was transported by and moved by, just the way that he has with words. And in getting to know him these past few years, being able to spend different, lengths of time with each other in India, as well as time when I was in Colorado, it's just been a very wonderful experience. So thank you for being with us, Tim.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's and I think the most kind of inspiring thing that led me to, because I had recently just been in contact again with Tim, and I think the biggest thing for me was last week we had spoken with our friends from the Know Thyself podcast, which was an amazing conversation. And we really dive deep into the conversation of alchemy and the idea of individuation. And we just started getting into those principles, and also seeing the corollaries between that, like kind of the Western understanding of alchemy, as well as the process of devotional service. And my experience of Tim is that he's always had this expertise. He's studied both, and just his expertise in understanding the connections between that. And I wanted to dive and expand the conversation with him today. Keli, do you have anything on your mind?
That sounds really exciting. I was left completely enthralled, captivated, and hyped from our last podcast. And I'm glad that we have an opportunity to continue along the same kind of line of thought. And I love stories, so I hope you will tell some stories, Tim. But yeah, it's just very nice to meet you, and I'm excited to delve a little bit deeper. I mean, I'm not sure if I could take the responsibility of beginning a discussion, but just something I was thinking about today is comfort, the principle of comfort. And I was inspired to kind of share this with you because it seems, like from the initial or from the onset of the spiritual path, the spiritual journey, when one takes to the spiritual path, one thing that we all tend to hear is that God, whoever God is for you, has constructed, fabricated, built the material world in such a way as to frustrate you, right? Maybe it was just me, but this kept coming up at very early stages of my spiritual life. People kept telling me this. You will be frustrated at every juncture of material life. And we ask ourselves this question, like, why can't I get no satisfaction, right? Where is the comfort? It seems like material life is this constant pursuit for comfort. I was just speaking very briefly with a friend today who lives in Assam. There's just been huge earthquakes there in Assam, Myanmar, India. Obviously, the COVID situation in India is crazy. I've just moved to London and just, walking around amongst people again, seeing everyone with masks on still, dealing with life, And I was just wondering, I was hoping we would be able to have a discussion around comfort and, if there is such a thing as alchemy or psychology or spiritual life, if there's such a thing that, a certain practice or process can facilitate kind of internal comfort, even if external comfort is impossible. Perhaps internal comfort isn't the right phrase, but satisfaction, contentment, belonging, these kind of feelings. So I really want to perhaps explore that a little bit today.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, let's just dive right in. Tim, do you have any thoughts kind of on, I think that's a wonderful direction to go. And I think, when I think of alchemy and kind of from our conversation last week, it is this process of transformation, of transmutation. And when I think of that, there is a lot of discomfort. There is a lot of inconvenience in many ways. So I think this is a great way to dive into the conversation. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. It's cool. It was an unexpected direction,
Yeah.
There's 100 doors and that one, comfort. Wow. Yeah, comfort and convenience is the main enemy of progress, of human integrity and individuation. Comfort and convenience is the hardwired escape. This is how we fold in on ourselves and absolutely guarantee our egocentrism. If we look and see that our value system is really driven by comfort and convenience, this is automatically egocentric, anti-DOS mentality. I think I'm not such a pundit, but I think it's in the 5th canto or something, Rishabhadev's instructions, where he says that, human life is meant for sacrifice. That's what the dharma, like the dharma of water is flow, liquid. The dharma of fire is shine. The dharma of human is like yagya. We have little bumblebees. They're working so hard, like our friend Keli here. Bumblebees working so hard all day, collecting nectar, pollinating stuff. They're just working so that the whole matrix works, so that the whole web of life works. And every little, aerating little worm in the soil is doing the same thing, working, so that the whole thing works for the whole family, for everybody, And then you got this unique piece of the puzzle, which is the human being. So we're part of nature, obviously, because everything inside the universe is nature's product. But we stand up straight and we have this free will thing. So nature has apparently produced the ingredients by which we can express free will, but that doesn't mean that we're separated from nature. So we also have a job to do in the big weaving of things. And according to the Bhagavatam, to Rishabdev, that is sacrifice. Like the old school rishis, they're like, swaha, swaha, you know, all the stars, all the devas, all the ancestors, all the unborn descendants, all the like rivers, all the waters, all the lakes, all the mountains, swaha, swaha. So the face is black with smoke from sitting there making oblations for everybody in the whole matrix, because that's our job. The job of the human being in general. I don't say like everybody should go form for a priestly vocation, but the job of the human being as an archetype in the web of nature is sacrifice. And everybody's sacrificing their time and energy. The bumblebee's sacrificing just as much, but his nature is pollinating and stuff. And our nature is sacrifice, of making sacrifices. We're meant to like weave heaven and earth together. We're meant to tap into the potential of the absolute and make sure that is distributing to everybody, because everybody's our family. And our own psyche would be fractured if we separate our little microcosm from the macrocosm. Like, yeah, it's me, I have to get mine, but I don't care about the macrocosm that's doing everything. Every little bumblebee, I owe my life to them. You know, I'm in debt to every living being. And if I just want my own comfort, I immediately clip myself out of the whole matrix of life, and I become a burden to life. I become dangerous. I become unqualified for the sacred body that I'm occupying. This is a fine line. A human being is like an atomic bomb. It's a tiny little thing that has a big effect. It can have a big effect of bringing auspiciousness and actually feeding, you know, the finality of this whole business. What's going on here? There's something going on here for everybody who's included inside of it. And we have a pivotal place. We're not more important than the bumblebee, but we have a very particular role. And comfort and convenience is the downfall of the human being. To live for my own comfort and convenience is completely contradictory to my dharma. You know, not just dharma like my dharma to do good. It's like, no, like in the bodhisattva sense, your dharma is to feed the awakening of all life. That's your duty, because you're alive and because everyone else has made that possible, including uncountable ancestors and everything. You have a debt, and so you're born into debt. And thankfully, the human being repays their debt by doing something super sublime. And like you're talking about creativity, you know, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up for a minute. But creativity begins with prayer. Creativity begins with like the sacred, the ceremonial. Like, why do we have music? Why do we have storytelling? Why do we have painting? Why do we have dance? Because somebody slipped into their human dharma and occupied the space of what it is to be a human, you know, in communion with God and nature. And it blew them away. And they were like, they wanted to tell the other people in the clan, this is what we're supposed to be doing, but they couldn't. Blah, blah, blah. So they had to dance. They had to like, you know, paint and like tell stories and make music and all the beautiful creative things that make human beings nice and like something we can be proud to be part of. You know, the part that we can be proud of. It's all born from the original womb of creativity, which is just occupying your dharma as a priest or priestess, as an intercessor on behalf of all life. I'm here to use my creative intelligence to link heaven and earth so that we can all get what we're here for.
I wanted to pick up on that point of like weaving or linking heaven and earth together. That's a really nice thought. And I'm not entirely sure I understand it. I love everything you just said, by the way. I resonate with it deeply. And I love how you brought in the, you know, the purpose or the manifestation of creativity as being a way to express something inexpressible, you know. It seems like this is the ridiculous paradox we experience as human beings, and perhaps this is what you mean as, you know, by weaving heaven and earth together, is like we are trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. We're trying to, you know, fit the unlimited into this limited vessel of human being, and it seems like art is the only sensible way of expressing something so unfathomable. So I'm just really interested in, like, could you elaborate on that point of weaving heaven and earth together? One word that came to mind as you were saying that is like embodiment, maybe. Embodiment, and yeah, this other paradox we experience is like we are divine beings, but we are embodied as well. That's uncomfortable for me a lot of the time. And yeah, I don't know if you could elaborate on that point, Tim. That was really interesting.
I mean, you're provoking the conversation, like.
Oh, he's good. He just stokes.
Yeah.
Stoking, right?
I mean, the conversation, the like, let's heal everything. Let's get right to it and stop pitter-pattering around. Because again, we're trying to keep on the lookout for comfort. We don't want to have a comfortable conversation. That's not, we want to have a progressive conversation. We want to have a healing conversation. We want to have a conversation that produces the necessary and desirable outcome. And we have to stop and think, is the necessary and desirable outcome like comfort? Wow, that was really nice. And those were good points. And like, cool, next podcast, next subject, next thing, next, I'll consume another thing. There's infinite stuff to consume. It's comfort food. The whole internet is just a smorgasbord of comfort food. That's
junk food too.
And because we need so much comfort, because we're in such an uncomfortable predicament, especially collectively, globally, that's why everybody's binging. Because if you just stop, something will happen to you. I've done this, so I'm going to say from experience, if you go into a room, cover the windows, cover the doors, get somebody to just drop food outside the door once a day for 7 days, and you have no furniture inside and no computer and no phone and even nothing, no notebook to write, if you just put yourself in an empty room with nothing and take a big old cup of time, just 7 days, take a cup of time, just be with time and see what it does to you. See what it brings up, how uncomfortable it can be. Even if the weather's nice, you can have a little fan in there. You don't have to be sweltering. You don't have to be actually suffering. Just deprive yourself of things that you could use for escapism, to not face where you're at right now. You wouldn't need actually to study the Bhagavad Gita or to do sadhan bhakti, or you wouldn't need to do anything or read anything or prop yourself up with anything. If you could just sit for 7 days with yourself with no distraction, no escape valve, it would work. It would work you. And it would be very uncomfortable. So it depends what kind of conversation we want to have. And I presume that we're here to have a conversation that the outcome that we desire is not that kind of comfort. There's definitely another sense of comfort, to be home, to be real, to come back. Mystic.
I think that one point that's just come up for me is, again, about art, is how art is a way of like conveying the uncomfortable and making it seem sweet, like there are things that are very difficult to say like this, but as soon as you put a guitar in someone's hand, it becomes very easy to discuss such a thing. So yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation of substance, which might not be comfortable necessarily, but I also feel like I would love to know a little bit more about you as a person, Tim, because if you are the kind of guy that has spent 7 days in a completely like sense deprivatory room, I can only imagine that you've had an incredible life in other respects as well. So I don't know if you could weave some of your personal life into a tale on comfort and discomfort. That would be really interesting as well.
Yeah, I'll just have to let your request go inside and come out when it comes out, because I still, cool. This is a conversation that like it branches, so I don't want to lose that. We were talking about heaven and earth, and then I started saying about comfort, and every point there's an intersection. So
Heaven and earth
it's tempting to just go with, and we could do that too. If we were really ready to just like drop structures, we could just flow. But I think for now, just to keep a little, light rein on things, because I want to navigate with you. I want to go somewhere. And it's like when you're sailing in the ocean in the middle of the night, there's millions of points of light to reference, but they're all moving except for one. There's one point.
I was thinking, because Ananda titled the podcast Alchemy of Nature and Spirit, right?
Yeah.
So I think this heaven and earth realm and weaving of these two spaces seems like a relevant topic. I'd love for you to carry on along those lines.
Yeah, me too. I would love to carry on in that direction. So where do we go back in? First of all, I just want to say, I really just want to appreciate what you said about art making the uncomfortable accessible. Because you guys, I'm sure you guys know this, or maybe Ananda because of your musician life. But blues music in America, we got blues music. You know where the word blues comes from?
Being depressed.
Yeah, but why is it called blue? Like, who connected that color? Like, why wasn't it the reds? Why the blues?
Yeah.
And it's because, nowadays you go to the pharmacy if you need some allopathic medicine, you get a little plastic container that comes, it's orange plastic container, because that stops the UV light from damaging the medicine. But in the old days, medicine used to come in blue glass bottles. So down in the South, where there is a lot of grief, a very heart-wounded history of human relations and a collective identity discovery, you had a form of music appear called the blues, which was about, it became so beautiful thing, it became art, but it was about surviving. It was about surviving indigestible pain. And so what they would say down in the South, if someone was sick, was, well, you need to go in the bathroom behind the mirror, you open up the mirror, and there's the blues. And you take that. The blues is the medicine cabinet. And from a Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective, you say, like, what's Gauranga Mahaprabhu come to show as the path of salvation is separation. It's not just come home and chant, come to the path and chant 16 rounds and distribute books and you're going back home. He's like, no, that's not what he's showing. He's showing, give your heart to God until it makes you crazy with separation and you're grinding your face on the wall all night. And the only way that you can deal with it and simultaneously, paradoxically progress is by singing the blues. Vipralam Kirtan. The essence of the whole Vedas is the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the essence of the Bhagavatam is the 10th canto, and the essence of the 10th canto is the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters of Rasa Lila. And the essence of the Vedas, which are the essence of sacred thought, someone could say in their subjective opinion, the essence of sacred human thought, you distill it, and you end up with Gopi Gita, Vipralamba Kirtan, the song of love and separation. So the blues, the medicine, is pain, and the disease is separation. And that separation is fractured out everywhere. Of course, in most existential sense, it's heaven and earth are divided, and the soul and God are separated, but it's also internal. That reflects everywhere. The main theme is that heaven and earth are divided in our heart and mind. I'm embodied in this world, and I'm in conflict with being embodied because religion told me that I should be in heaven or I should be in Vaikuntha or something, and this world is either sinful or Maya or something terrible and evil and dangerous. So I'm living in a world that's dangerous and against God, but my mind is identified with God, but I can't. How can I practice the practice when all my instruments to practice the practice are made of earth and fire and my lips and my body, and it's impossible to get the result. New life come when mommy and daddy come together, they make a new life. And if mommy, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, and daddy, spirit that animates everything, if they're separated, you're not getting new life. No matter how hard you bang your head on the door of like affirming your spiritual ideals, if you are dividing heaven and earth, if you are in conflict with being embodied, your psyche is mismatch. So there's different ways to do things, you know. Some people, there's a path of transcendence, you know, a path of like just completely detached from this world. That's a way that people have been doing for thousands of years. That works for ascetics. That works for wandering mendicants who just detach from society completely, and they're ready to, like, if food lands in my lap today, I'll eat. If not, I can fast. That works. But if you're going to live in the world and have family and be part of the perpetuation of the human species, which has a reason to exist in the matrix of nature and the cosmos and the big picture, we have a reason to be, and that reason will stop if we're all ascetics. Then there's a path of transmutation, which means changing your relation with this material energy. So heaven and earth, maybe some people, they don't need to reconcile heaven and earth. They just go heaven so hard that they just lift anchor and go into the absolute, you know. Very few people have been able to do that, but still people have been doing it for thousands of years in all kinds of traditions. It's a real thing, and it will continue to be a real thing. But it's a thing that if you mix that into human society and culture, you split two things. You put yourself in a conflict that is irreconcilable, that either destroys the integrity of your transcendence, you know, because you're grounded here, or it puts you in internal violent conflict with your life here, so that you feel chronic unconscious shame for being alive. It's very hard to feel love of God and devotion and have your heart melt with receptivity to receive the grace that will show you every day what you need to know. It's very hard to feel that when you are chronically ashamed of being alive. Healing is necessary. And when two things come together, like healing and creativity, I think are inseparable things. When things are lined up properly, when the elements of life, we're relating properly with things, the structure of life, which is why I'm interested to talk about alchemy and nature and spirit and stuff, because that's all about knowing the laws, just like the mechanics of how it works. If you know how it works, you get the result you need. If you don't know how it works, you're going to have perpetual chaos. So, yeah, I lost my own thought, but maybe it's because I'm supposed to turn over the sound to your mouth.
Well, I'm just appreciating this point of the shame of existing, and how deep I feel like that is, in this kind of existential crisis that living entities go through in our attempt to exist. And I've often thought, when we were at a music festival one time, we were holding some programs at a music festival, and our reflection, I was with my friend Dave Amadova, and our reflection was, we go through these huge arrangements and massive, you know, spend millions of dollars, travel hundreds and hundreds of miles in order to come and like put on these music festivals in the middle of the forest, in the middle of, you know, wherever we put music festival, or just gatherings of all sorts, right? To affirm our existence, to affirm that I exist, and everyone here is affirming that I exist because we all agreed to be here. And just the inadequacy that often actually, the kind of shallow type of existence affirming experiences that we create as human beings, the shallowness and the inadequacy in comparison to really understanding our embodiment and understanding our I like how you brought up again this role of human existence, the dharma, to perform sacrifice, to awaken life, and to utilize that source in ourself. Yeah. So then just the shame of existence and our complicated ways that we cope with that.
You know, Ananda sent me a book by Thomas Merton called Raids on the Unspeakable. And I understood about 0.3% of it. But the 0.3% of it I did understand was very much along these lines that Ananda's bring up of like the necessity of affirmation as far as existing goes. Like, although this book was written, you know, before social media was a thing, you can see how it's still applicable. You know, what more is the selfie than just a call and a plea for, you know, acknowledgement and affirmation of existence? And this is something like Thomas Merton was talking about. He was like, you know, actually, you know, we will experience a form of suffering if our existence is not validated. You know, not even like if you know, not that we're being adored, but just validated, just you exist. You know, it's so difficult for people to live when they don't have this affirmation, this confirmation that yes, I am real, I exist, I am part of this world, you know. So we can see it as shallow, but it, you know, it seems to me that it's almost like a necessity. It's like essential. If we don't have spiritual maturity, we need some validation, you know, some confirmation that yes, I am like a real thing. So what is that, you know?
I just feel like you're like driving a spear through my heart. You know, we can use different languages and different things to have a conversation that sprawls boundaries, but for the most part, I like to speak in the language of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Vedanta. It's just the best palette, you know, for human conversations, I think. There's other necessary things also, I find, but Vedic, you know, as it's been passed down to us, Vedic cosmology or like ontology is that we are a jivatma. You know, this body, this face is moving and animated and alive, and all the living beings, all these forms are moving because there's a jivatma inside. And that jivatma is a localized unit of thinking, feeling, and willing. It's individual in that one jivatma doesn't, like a drop of water, like melt into another. If two jivatmas would touch, they don't melt. It stays. Somehow, this God's design, this little spark of consciousness, it enters into bodies without like melting into them. It keeps its localized nature, and it can like contact through sentiment with other living beings, but they don't melt. It's like permanently, like indestructible little unit of thinking, feeling, willing, individual consciousness. But it has no identity. It has no identity. And so let's just say that it's not the general story, the like well-worn way of expressing things. You know, even if we have authentic knowledge about something, sometimes we say the same thing over and over so long that the words run dry and it doesn't mean anything anymore because we've said it so much, you know. So this world, the word change, the transmigration of bodies and stuff like that. But maybe there's a way to tell the same story with another language, and we could say that actually the jivatma, since eternal time, is looking for one thing and one thing only, and it's her swarup, her own form, my body, my me. And a spirit being cannot be satisfied with a temporal material body. Obviously, they don't match. So we're so terrified, you know, death. Everyone's afraid of death, but maybe it's not biological. Maybe it's because the jivatma is built by instinct. I need to be someone. I need to be someone. And I need to be someone so I can relate with other someones and be seen by them and have exchanges between sentient beings. Maybe it's like hardwired into consciousness, the jivatma. I need to be someone, and to be someone, I need a body that's different from your body so that our bodies and voices can exchange. We can have relationships. We can create things. I need to create and relate. And I can't do that as just like, I am a unit of thinking, feeling, and willing. I have to have a body. So maybe it's not karma and punishment and unqualification to be in the presence of God that drives us, you know, necessarily. Maybe we don't have to say it like that to drive us to take a body again and again. Maybe it's our inborn, passionate, one-pointed, and undiminishing eternal desire to be someone so that I can be in relationships. And we don't know until a certain point, like we don't become conscious that the person I'm above all trying to relate with and have a body to relate with also, because he has a body, they have a body, the divine couple. But we don't maybe articulate that even at the depths of our chitta until we get like parampara knowledge or something. But maybe above all, like the whole spiritual quest and the whole crucible of samsara is just because we want one thing, the one thing that we're created for, and it's to occupy our own identity, and identity has a body. If we're created in the image of God, well, God's identity has a body. It's personified identity. So I think this pain of, the selfie to I need to be comforted, I need to be affirmed. This is really our predicament, is that in the depth of our being, even as devotees, I would say as devotees, we're in a particular conflict inside, because we have so much philosophy about personalism, and we have so much also by causeless mercy, subjective experience. I think devotees have actual experience, little drops in the Sankirtan or, with the deity, like people are getting what we don't deserve, because that's what we connected with. It's not about earning or deserving. It's about causeless mercy reigning, and you just have to show up at the right place. And if how receptive you are, how well your cup is formed, is how much you're going to catch of that causeless, unearnable, undeservable. It's just coming if you're there, and if you can catch it. But for devotees, that aggravates a process of alchemy, of inner conflict that I think is more extreme than anyone else, because we are intellectually affirming personalism, identity. We are spiritually touching a sense of attraction and value beyond all things for the personality of Godhead, the path of personalism. And yet, in the depth of our chitta, if we could go deep into our unconscious, we have no idea who we are outside of this body. If you took away this body and what my initiated name is, and what my service is in the temple, and my role in the social structure, if you took that all away at the level of your soul, you cannot say one word about who you are, most devotees. And that is a serious division of personalism, das. And at the deepest repressed root, I cannot affirm myself. I'm not seen. I'm not seen, no matter how many selfies, no matter how many services I do and Lakshmi points I get, or how many Bhagavatam Saptahas I give. So everyone even if I become a sannyasi and I'm making disciples everywhere, look, I'm a das. Can't you see it? But it's not good enough if I can't see it. In the Cheto Darpana, if I can't look in my heart and see who I am and know, it's true. Okay, to be able to relate with God, who has a transcendental Satchidananda body, is not possible with a gross material body or a subtle material body. I would need to have Satchidananda senses to behold him and resolve the ambiguity in my heart. This is all real or not? I have these feelings in the Kirtan. I have these feelings reading these Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. I've had many feelings for many years, but until I can perceive God and my relation with God, and that I am of the same substance, until I have the subjective knowledge of that, the actual experiential knowledge of that, it's not proven. And that is a wound in my heart. And there's a lot of ways that devotees are in a very particular kind of alchemy of this need for affirmation. And there's an unaddressed split of fighting so hard, so sincere, so much sacrifice, so much for personalism, and yet suppressing the fact that I'm completely infected with impersonalism. If I have no identity, eternal identity, if I cannot identify myself, that needs to be treated. That needs to be treated, because all of my pious activities and sukriti making is not going to resolve this. That will help me attract the circumstances, the ingredients that I need to do the alchemy of individuation at an eternal level. And that individuation is the one thing every living being is here in this samsara for, and is suffering for not having. And that's...
I like that you defined alchemy as this process of conflict. And just as a small thought to interject, it brought to mind that, you could say on a kind of global scale, there's a lot of conflict that we're distracted by. Then on on a smaller scale, the conflict of my life. So the kind of the juxtaposition of the real conflict, the real like process of transformation. And when I'm distracted by the false conflict, when I'm distracted by the insignificant conflict or like the temporary conflict, how that takes away my energy from actually investing in the real conflict, this alchemy, the process of actual transformation, the process of realization, which you're describing, the process of individuation, and the angst and the existential dread, as our friend Jay Jagannath often says, that angst and that existential dread that I'm experiencing without actually addressing it by engaging with real conflict or this process of conflict alchemy, I'm expending all of that energy on false and temporary conflict, trying to mask or trying to find an answer really in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Just a thought I was having from what you were sharing.
There's something, we hear about you were talking, Tim, about the kind of like almost diseased mentality of a nestled impersonalism, and these thoughts of conflict, very interesting, because I was reading the Bhagavatam this morning, and Prabhupada's making this point of jaundice, how we suffer from this spiritual jaundice, and part of that affliction is the desire to consume mundane, kind of our mundane appetite, for literature or for, material conflict, mundane conflict, and how the way you treat that jaundice is, with the sugar candy of genuine spiritual topics, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. But at first, it's very uncomfortable. It's very distasteful. There is definitely a conflict there, and it's very interesting. I think this is a point perhaps a lot of people can testify to. Even something as simple as like chanting japa, chanting Hare Krishna. Like it was so difficult for me to just stay awake and chant japa to begin with. Just the act of just keeping my eyes open and chanting Hare Krishna was difficult, and I could feel such a resistance, such an internal conflict. There was a part of me that really wanted to dedicate myself to, to self-discovery, to connection, to like, to kind of cleansing this mirror of my heart, to develop this Satchit Ananda senses to perceive something transcendental. But then, how do we, how can a genuine process of alchemy help us to navigate through and past initial discomfort and not be dissuaded, and keep the goal in mind, and know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, because I think for a lot of people it's very nice to hear these things, but when the bitter taste actually starts to appear after some time, it's very easy to feel discouraged. And it's very easy to perhaps retreat back into the mundane or back into nature and shy away from pursuance of spirit or transcendence. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like spiritual perseverance through the discomfort of alchemy, something like that.
Yeah, this is it's an epic subject, and maybe the most important polarity for a human being to investigate about their own experience is like pleasure and pain. Just investigate them, experiment, learn more and more, and like seek like what is the pleasure that I'm feeling, what is the pain that I'm feeling, and then what is real pleasure and what is real pain. And they don't gray out, they don't merge, but if you go deep enough, you'll end up, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, his He's the supreme enjoyer. Why would the supreme enjoyer come to grind his face on the wall and feel like absolute existential misery, where every second feels like a million years of misery? He's like zooming in on the pain until every second experientially takes thousands of years to pass through because it's so deep. Why would the supreme enjoyer, who's like dharma, his like being is like, enjoy taste. I'm made of taste and taste is for me. Why would such a person come and apparently his, if we take like the archetypal image of this mendicant in the Gambhira, suffering like we've never seen any human being suffer like that, so intense that he's like sweating blood and like so explosive in his heart that it blows his joints apart, and so deep that it pulls him back in together, and he's just like, his body is like being ravaged by the level of suffering that he's feeling. But who's going through that? One, the supreme enjoyer, whose only business is enjoying, and two, our teacher. The person that, if we're devotees, we've chosen to follow his path. So something we need to think about there, about pain. And, we heard like prema, whether it's meeting or separation, love, divine love of God, is completely nectar. It might look pretty terrible from outside, from someone who's not initiated into the mysteries of love. They might look like, like I don't want to. Why would you be in that kind of sampradaya? Like, why would you do that? But from the inside, if we could cry for Krishna, you would cling, like, let me never stop crying. Let me never stop this crying. Let me feel this piercing and let these tears flow out for the rest of my life. If I could, like, if I had to lose my job, if I had to like be abandoned, but if I could keep feeling this more and more for the rest of my life, it would be worth it. So there's a relationship between pleasure and pain, but not on the surface where we're living in the material orientation is completely dualistic, where the knee-jerk reaction to the dualism that's so awful is oneness. But it's not oneness. The answer to existential fragmentation, being split in two, being existentially in conflict with your being, the answer for that division is not oneness, it's complementarity. So something we need to see, I think, about pleasure and pain. And so if at the deepest root, what's honest, because for me, I don't know about you guys, but if I just feel honestly what I feel, whatever it is, it feels great. It's such a relief to be with what I'm really in. I don't care what it is, as long as it's real. That's like, I made up my mind a long time ago that I'm not looking for peace from the path. I'm looking for honesty, first of all. I want to live an honest life. Honest with myself, honest with God, no show, nothing to prove. I just want to live my life with you. I want to live honestly my relationship with God and with my own identity. Honestly, that's enough for me. Whatever, I would rather, even if it's grievous, if it's the real thing, I'd rather that than something more comfortable that's not real. Like that is like kryptonite. And that's the great struggle. It's again the comfort, because comfort lures us into something that's not real. If the human being is meant for sacrifice, and Gauranga is showing like the ultimate, what is yagya, is to weep, stand on the earth and weep for heaven, for God. You are connecting, on behalf of everyone. They say Gauranga, they're dancing with their hands up and it's purifying the worlds above, and the feet on the ground is going down to the lower planets. And like, is that just poetry, or are they talking about really he's connecting heaven and earth? He's really sending a charge of truth and honesty into the whole creation that will, like ripple effect, push everyone toward honesty, back towards reality, because we're all way off course. So I just want to say that if at the root, if we could go deep enough into honesty, we would find the pain of separation. I just want to know my relation with God, for example. I want to know who I really am in your eyes. Not I grew up, the Catholic Church or whoever society told me that I'm sinful and fallen because of all these things, and then I projected that's how God sees me. But that's not, I never asked God, like, how do you see me? I just picked it up from other people, what I must be in front of his eyes. So if I could go deep enough into my honest truth and see, what do you think of me? And oh my God. And then I would feel great separation. Like, why can't I be close to that person, the one person who actually sees me? I'm looking for all this affirmation with my selfies and stuff, but there's one person who can see me, and I'm not looking for his affirmation. If I take my own pulse, I'm looking for everybody else's who can't see me no matter what.
Yeah.
But he can. And if I would let him see me, just like, what happens when Mahavishnu glances on the cosmic creation? The whole thing comes alive just by being seen by him. If we could come in prayer and communion into the presence, I'm not doing this to finish my rounds. I'm doing this to be in your presence. And when the glance of the one we're coming to be seen by, like darshan doesn't mean I'm coming to see you. Darshan means I'm coming to be seen by you. I'm presenting myself at your altar so that I may have the great benefit of being seen by you and come alive. Because I'm like a dormant universe of possibilities until your life-giving glance falls on me. But I have to just do my part and come in front of you, put myself at your feet, at your altar through prayer, communion. It's a mood. And if you glance on me, boom, I become real. And in relation, when that wakes up, you can't have separation until there's meeting. Once you know that, oh my God, I do have someone and you're my everything, then we can feel, I think at the depth, the pain that's real and would make us real. If we could live the fullness of pleasure and the fullness of pain, we would have a full, real life. And the real pain is about separation from that person. But how are we going to get to the place where that pain of separation is when it's covered over with impersonalism? We're afraid to feel like pain because of how we've been trained by. And so we depersonalize. And then we have like the two hands of impersonalism are exploitation and apathy. It's the other's not a person. I can just take, like the internet consumption. How can I, especially if I'm trained in sublime philosophy and I have a taste for self-realization, how can I pass hours on the internet watching YouTube and stuff like that unless I'm apathetic? And how can I be that apathetic unless underneath I don't feel that I'm really a person? And how can I exploit others? Just consume other people's little TikToks and videos, and what to speak of pornography. I'm not thinking that that's a human being. Pornography is like a plague. Why? Why is it even possible? Because you think there's no person there. And how is it possible, especially for someone with ideals and values and wanting to be compassionate and self-realized, to indulge in things like that? Because you don't think there's a person in here either. And so it feels really natural and real to space out on the internet and consume because you go blank. And that connects with and validates the inner suppressed feeling of impersonalism. I'm not here. The ambiguity of my identity actually reaches out to the internet above all things, and any kind of escapism, but the ambiguity of identity reaches out to what it connects with, a place, an experience where I can not feel and not think. And that can also be in like religious society. You can like go so hard into your duty in a religious society that you're not feeling what you're going through. It's not about my process, it's about my duty and my seva and all this. Escapism is a sucking void of impersonalism, which is the cancer of all pain. All grief is coming out of impersonalism, but impersonalism is only there because we're afraid to go deep enough to where the separation is. The missing piece is not that there's nothing there. The missing piece is that there's an unfulfilled love there, and that would turn the tide. But it takes so much bravery to override our like acquired instinct for comfort, to go into the pain of separation, that we would rather cover it with impersonalism that makes our whole life a suffering. And then we just project into a world that's like collapsing on itself. Mass extinction being provoked, it's self-destruction, because what's inside? I am nothing. Voidism. So we're magically projecting absolute nihilistic obliteration to the world. But if we could go deep enough to the pain of separation underneath, consciously know I'm digging for that and feel it, which is worse and better than anything. What we would project to the world is a connection of heaven and earth, that it's about calling for God. You call for God when you really feel the need. And that makes a link, a power that makes this dynamic of the relation between servant and master come alive and do something. If we could feel that pain, we could heal all other pain. But because we don't want to feel that pain, we create all other pain. It's alchemy. You can't stop pain. But what pain is the wise one to live? And what pleasure corresponds? These kind of things we have to think about. You can't stop pain. But what pain? If you avoid the pain that would heal everything, you kill everything. So we should understand that there's like laws of nature working here. There's a way to resolve this whole issue, global existential issue. and it's by crying for God.
I'm feeling deeply churned. And one thing that really stuck out to me was this kind of, when you explain darshan, to be seen, and I've heard that definition, but then I was confronted with my conception that I have a choice to see, that I can go and I can see God, or I can see who I want to see me. And then just that disconnect between the two, or rather the way you kind of explained exploitation and apathy being the two limbs of impersonalism, and how that's the, I often think of, there's the mantra, that prayer that's written to Srila Prabhupada, or Prabhupada actually wrote for his disciples to recite, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, right? That his whole goal in coming was to remove this cancerous plague from human society, that this cancerous plague of impersonalism, of apathy and exploitation. And just in my own experience of life, like how much impersonalism I'm, infected with, in the terms of apathy, and the fact that apathy arises because I'm resonating with within a void energy of consumption. I'm resonating with that impersonal energy that I'm experiencing in myself. And so then I see it outside of myself and I resonate, and therefore I waste time. That was just very, very profound.
Like attracts like.
Yeah.
Your like articulation has left me speechless almost. And yeah, sometimes you get this thing, like if you hear a song come on somewhere, it takes you back to a specific moment in time. You have connotations with that song. And you were talking about darshan and allowing yourself to be seen, and I was just taken back to like this morning in my day, and how there's this constant like space out that I go through in life, where spiritual practice becomes like a monotony. It becomes a duty. It becomes like just another kind of add-on to my identity or my character. And it's like something about just going through the motions, something that has always really attracted me to Jagannath are the eyes, and how those eyes, if you allow them, they can stare right through you. They completely penetrate you. And that can be quite unsettling, because I feel like there is although there is this exploitation, this apathy we're talking about, especially online, allowing ourselves to be consumed and seen in a certain way. There is definitely like there's a vulnerability, to allowing yourself to truly be seen. So if I think that I'm a despicable person, I don't want to be seen by God, because I think that God is pure, God is truth, God is love. And I've got to like, wait a minute, like I need to be ready. Like I need to prepare myself before I allow Jagannath's eyes to penetrate me, and actually like see. So it's like overcoming that fear of, I guess, being vulnerable, to God, and then that in order to counteract that, I guess there's different masks we wear, and that's something I've found just like walking around London the past couple of days. I've started to walk like people walk in London, even after like 2 days. There's like a certain way I've seen people walk that's like, I'm confident, I'm powerful. Like that's how I want people to see me, because I'm scared to buzz around like a happy bumblebee, and that's vulnerable, So yeah, I just find everything you're saying very profound, and especially this this merging of pleasure and pain, heaven and earth, and going deep enough to going deep into the vipralamba, you know, going deep into that pain of like separation. Yeah, very profound points.
I just want to specify, I don't mean to say the merging of pleasure and pain. I mean the marriage of pleasure
Sure.
and pain. How life is one thing that alternates. I mean, that's the DNA of life. Is there's a dark person, he's very sham, and there's a golden person, she's very bright. They are the polarity of life, and everything expands from there. Their encounter is so dynamic that everything has come from that, and everything tracing back to its source has the same DNA. So healing in every sense is about reestablishing the couple, what the alchemists call the holy marriage. They're not saying merging, because merging would be like losing identity, losing dynamic. You need two. That makes a perpetual motion machine. Each one feeds the other. If you have an experience of meeting with God, with the divine, then afterwards you can pine for it. You can think, oh God, where did I lose that? How do I find it again? You know, and you can. I can't have any interest in chocolate ice cream until I've tasted it. And then like, wow, now I like that, you know? You can't feel longing or separation for something you haven't experienced. So a meeting will automatically bring a separation, a longing. It's natural. You don't have to force it or impose it. And that separation, by going into it, will culture such an attraction, such a focus, and reaching, like sentiment is reaching for the object for which you are longing. And it will bring it back in a new way after having been starved with great passion for that encounter. When it comes again, it will be bigger than the first time. And when it passes again, like the tide going out, it's going to bring a separation which is more intense than the one before. And this is the dynamic of bhajan, this is the mysticism of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, is how do we enter into the polarity engine where pleasure and pain, we're living authentic, honest pleasure and pain about our real self that's not contaminated and like warped by impersonalism, because we don't need to escape. We don't need to escape being intimidated by the pain anymore. We're ready for the real pain, and we like choose as like proper warrior-hearted human being. I'm ready to face it. I'm indestructible. I've died millions of times. Bring it. You know? So that's what we're trying to get to. Gaudiya Vaishnavism begins, what Gauranga is giving begins from a stage that most devotees have not come to yet. We are, as a global phenomenon, we are a Kanishta society. We are Ka-Nishta, you know, mean neophyte, but literally means Ka-Nishta, without Nishta, unsteady. We don't have this rolling momentum of pleasure moving into pain. I feel the attraction for Krishna, then I feel the pain, and that pain brings new attraction, and we're not living like that. There's big gaps, you know, broken, all the hours I can spend on the internet or whatever. There's big gaps where I just like disconnect from the pleasure and pain, and I go back into impersonalism and like apathy and exploitation, and it's so chopped up that there's no way without the engine rolling to really enter. It's like a plant. It gradually grows and it blossoms and it has a flower and it has a fruit, and it like, but if you keep cutting it down, it grows and then you chop, and it grows and you chop. You can spend your whole life plateauing at one level of spiritual realization, because steadiness is necessary. Continuity is necessary. And we can't have continuity when we have an inner fracture of the polarity of life. There's a conflict between them. They're not married. They're not rolling one into the other, expanding each other in a perpetual engine machine. There's like, this means not that. And da 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 da. Oh, now I'm completely in Maya for like 3 hours on YouTube videos or whatever, you know? Now I'm going to do some serious sadhana and bhajan. And like, now I'm going to do, it's like, it's too, this is the polarity of life, is not like spacing out and being sincere. The polarity of life is pleasure and pain in a transcendental state of being. That is a couple that produces infinite creativity. That has produced the entire cosmos and all of our soul existence. That has produced millions of Vaikuntha worlds. If that happens in us, the polarity of life comes together, what creativity will come out of you and what healing potential will flow out of you is unspeakable. Because you plug into, you know, Prabhu's mercy. become a participant.
I appreciate this distinction between our experience, and it's something that I was thinking about actually last night, this experience of progress. When, as you described, the plant that grows, it's progressing and then cut, and it grows and then cut. It's progressing. It's making movement. It feels like growth. But the actual difference, the drastic difference between that cycle of polarity that is expanding, right? It's just this plant, it's just this small plant that is being repeatedly cut. And so that difference of growth and expansion is very poignant to me.
Yeah, it's leashed. We're on a leash. I would say collectively, you can read Chaitanya Bhagavat or something, and you see about these personalities, Nityananda Ram, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, how they're roaring, how they, the world trembles when they chant, and what they do just when Nityananda Prabhu and his crew roll up into a village, what happens to that whole society. For 30 days, nobody eats in the village because they don't know when it's day or night. They're just transported. And are we taking that seriously? Do we actually allow that story to have some kind of reality in us? Or is it that's nice. And yeah, I believe it. And we're telling ourselves I believe it. But at what level that it's true, are we really connecting with it? Because what we're doing in comparison, we're not those followers. We're not following that. We're something else. We're productive in a Western way. We're productive. We're doing programs, and young college people are becoming interested in our discussions, and we're making records, and we're distributing books, and we're productive, but we're plateau, totally plateau. And one way is the plant is growing and then it's hitting a roof, but it's also being on a leash. If we were really if we were inheritors of the current of Gaura Shakti, and we were off the leash as a society, what we would do for this planet, we could tip, write a different future than what we're seeing on the news right now. And I think that if we don't dare to think that, honestly and strategically, and invest in yep, I'm going to presume that we're here to change the world, and that this is just my, the smallest thing that I could do to be worthy to hope to enter into the presence of Radha Krishna one day is save the world. That's a small price to be in the presence of Radha Krishna. How highly do we value the presence of, have eternal residence in Navadvip Dham? How highly do we appreciate that? What would be the price? Not that you can earn it or deserve it, but just to be coherent with being part of that world, that realm of love and compassion, that integrity of that plane. How are you going to tune up to that level? The least you could do is be part of saving the world. If you would dare in integrity to say, yeah, I want, what to speak of, I want to be the Dasi of Radharani. Shut up. Don't even dare to think that unless you're ready to give your whole life for all living beings, for the compassion of the ultimate ideals with no leash and no boundary. And if you're going to live in a little box of your comfort and convenience version of bhakti yoga, don't dishonor our queen by pretending that her service is so cheap. The least we could do to be worthy even to pray for that service is try and save the world sincerely. You don't have to be a renunciate. Like we started talking at the beginning, there's a path of transcendence where you just completely come out from, I don't need to have a job, I don't need to pay bills, I don't even need to worry about what I'm going to eat today. You set yourself free. But there's another path that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prophecy about Namahat, families, matching with the model of Navadvip Dham, village, families. It's not everybody hiding in the temple, and it's not everybody just detaching from the world. It's investing in the world. But Srivas Thakur, my house is a space of the absolute's pastimes. This place belongs to him, and I'm going to form with my family, with my deity in the middle, and I'm going to align with other families, and we're going to roll a healing of nature and spirit by living a human culture, families, bloodlines, villages, but where it's all about being worthy to pray that I may enter into your Nitya Lila. I may realize a spiritual body made of pure love. How, if I have any impersonalism, apathy, and exploitation, can I imagine that I will manifest a body that is substanted of pure love? So I have what I have. I'm here on this earth, and I'm going to take the ingredients that are available to me now, and whether I can do it or not do it, I'm going to live as if so that I at least have the integrity to pray, I'd really like to make my home in your eternal pastimes and service. I would really like that. And so that I can feel in my own conscience permission to really abandon to that prayer, the lifestyle of praying for that. I'm going to live a life in this world that's downright revolutionary for love. Some people want the path of transcendence, they renounce, and some people, they take a path of transmutation, and you dig in, but not because you're attached, because it's your strategic response. And it's just how to live an honest life. If we're not full-on revolutionaries, like, you don't understand even that you're going to die and you're trying to make comfort and convenience here. If comfort and convenience is what dictates your choices, you are totally sleeping. I am totally sleeping. If that is not a factor in a real human being's calculations, comfort and convenience do not factor. That is not relevant to the equation of being a real human being. And at least we have to be human being before we could be Vaishnav.
Yeah.
Dare I say?
Yeah. No, I mean, we wanted to get uncomfortable. It's a wonderfully uncomfortable charge.
And the world is helping us. There's a pandemic everywhere. There's all this, like, everything's falling apart. Like, we have full permission. Just, what are you going to plan your future for your comfort and come on, look at the world. It's giving you all of this is happening is not a problem. There's so many devotee friends of mine, they're freaked out and they're sending conspiracy theory stuff. And I'm like, don't you have any faith in Yoga Maya? Don't you have any faith in Parameshwar? Like, this is all to our favor. This is not to be resolved. This is to be aligned with and run with it. You know, we are being given full permission to pull out the stops and just risk our life for a revolutionary response to pain. Doesn't matter where it's coming from, who it's coming from. People are afraid and they're in pain because they don't have their self. They're not affirmed. They're not coming in front of God and being seen and becoming real, and everyone's suffering for that. We're all in the same thing, red and blue, black and white. We're all in the same family, Mayavadis and everybody, every living being, we're family. We're in the same struggle. We have to see like family and respond to it like family. And the human beings has permission by being born as human, but especially by being born in a time like we're living now. We have full permission to just pull out all the stops and risk. Even if we don't do anything in our life, but you will die, coming with your heart in your hands. Look, whether I did or didn't do, I gave everything for everything you care about. That's my proof that I can, that's my conscience gives me permission to wish to be part of your family, Krishna, Vrindavan Dham. I would like to be a Brajavasi. My conscience gives me permission to wish for that because I gave everything I had for everything you care about. Not just about finishing my rounds and my little, my branch of this one lineage. I gave everything I had to care about everything you care about. So just so that I can come to you and say, like, that's my application form. Brajvasi, so high. You better show that you're giving everything for love with no fear. Or just don't pretend to pray for Braj Prem unless you're coming with a cup to catch it. You can pray for it. And he's giving it for free, but you better come with a cup that can catch it. Or that's all. We don't earn it or deserve it, but we have to come with a cup that can catch it. That's our only job. In front of Gauranga, who's giving everything for free, our job is to come with a cup that can catch it. So we have to think about our integrity and heal the cracks and the holes so that we can catch it. That's all. It's not earning or deserving. It's just, how do we receive? What is the science of receiving causeless mercy?
I remember at the beginning of this whole pandemic situation, I came across a saying, which was a disaster is a terrible opportunity to waste. And, I was just, I was reflecting on that kind of call to action that you were giving. It's like, actually, we don't give our whole selves because lack of faith, lack of faith that, Krishna has something to do with the situation. It's not chaos. It's not chaos. There is an opportunity in this apparent disaster. There is whether it's disaster on a macro level or a micro level. And I love the call to action. I'm very much feeling it, and and it's also, you know, it would be pretentious for me to say that I'm not going to forget about it, you know, 3 seconds after this call. It's like, you know, that's like the necessity of these conversations, the necessity of hearing from the right source, reading the right literature, you know, applying yourself in the right way is like you said, to stay awake. You know, it's one thing to wake up, but to stay awake, that's another thing. But I really appreciate your articulation, your wisdom, your realization, your encouragement, enthusiasm. I'm very much feeling it. I'm lamenting that there hasn't necessarily been like an introduction or like who is this incredible person that's sharing this wisdom part to this podcast. But I really like real talk. I really like this kind of opportunity to like wake up, you know. And yeah, it's incredible. I would love to hear more about your personal journey, because I can hear like integrity, intention, realization in what you're saying. And I'm sure it's very inspiring for people that are watching as well.
I want to interject. I want to give this conversation its full, like the full breadth and width that it deserves. And I have something that I'm also needing to attend to in about 10 minutes. But Tim, I want to invite you back again to the Take Note podcast. Can we have you on again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I would Thanks, love this. Guys. Yeah. No, I mean, I think one thing that really inspired me is just the vision of we started talking about that human life is actually meant for sacrifice, that it's meant for this giving of ourselves, and that sacrifice of really uplifting the whole world, and that the real process, the real path in doing that is this being seen in our process of prayer and our process of spiritual connection. I also, like Keli, feel very called. I feel very churned. And I also feel very grateful that we've been able to have this conversation, and we'll continue it. We'll dive deeper into this. So thank you again.
Yeah, if we started, we'll have to continue, because we can't finish it. You know, it's like,
yeah,
I'm not just saying what I'm talking about, but there is a particular conversation that is how human beings, first of all, are meant to live their life. You know, yeah, we do sacrifice and we're here for doing stuff. But the first thing about being human is the stories that we tell, the storytelling, the conversation that we're having. That's why, like, what's unfolding is called history. You know, in a kind of old school sexist way, it means like mankind's story, his story, what he's telling. So like, this is Sangha. Sangha means having a conversation, but a real one, a progressive one that has the power to move things and provoke alchemic reactions. I'm not interested in just talking about different ideas and like nothing changes. I'm interested in having the kind of quality of conversation that just having the conversation provokes change. It starts to affect, like by laws of nature and spirit, it starts to dislodge. It starts to break down calcified structures. It starts to undermine limiting views, until the day you just by instinct, unconsciously, you can't believe in them the same way you did before the conversation. They have been cracked and they start to crumble, and you start to come out from a shell into what you are supposed to be doing by being born in this form at this time. So I was thinking, you know, about action, because Keli was saying he appreciated the call to action. And there's a quote in front of all this, just one thing I would leave you guys with for the moment that's been helping me a lot lately is thinking about something that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said about the world is in no need of a reformer. And he's so uncompromising about his vision of the absolute that he says, no one and nothing can deviate the course of things from their design by even this one hair. Not even one hair. That's my parampara. That's the vision of my parampara. Nothing is, it's a done deal. Yogamaya has written this script. Gauranga is God. He gets his way. He came here to give something to everybody that hasn't been given for 1,000 Divya Yugas, and it's going to happen. You know, all of nature and all of life and the Supreme Controller is conspiring for something amazing that happens once in a really long time. And it's a big alchemic crucible, this universe. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is like, nobody, not even one hair, is throwing this thing off, because he knows who's in control and that you can't mess with that. You have no power to go against that. And yet, what is he doing but mobilizing enormous response to the movement of the hour? Enormous, like law breaking, like there's no sannyas in Kali Yuga. Boom, take sannyas, make 1,000 sannyasis, mobilize, you know? He's just like breaking rules and like doing the needful. And what's behind his like inconceivable transcendental reform mission to really change the tilt of the earth is this vision that nobody's going to change anything, what's going to happen, but he has stepped into being part of what's written. He's been just, that's all. You know, he's not doing it independently. He's just an instrument of the hand of God. And it was just a temporary thing. It's like right now, you know, his Bhaktivinoda Thakur came and he's like, Namhat, families, villages, boom. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he came, he analyzed the field, and strategically, like a general, he said, yes, and first we're going to need like a huge evangelo-monastic, you know, like bulldozer to break things open and spread things out. But it was never meant to be, it's meant to carry Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision. But it looks like he's doing the opposite, you know, by taking people away from their families, you know, making sannyasis and renunciates and stuff, which is always going to be necessary in some way, but it looks like a contradiction to what he's following. But how could it be? If he's an integrated being, he's doing what looks like the opposite, but is exactly the response, which is why we can't be blind followers. There's a polarity of life that if we're in tune with it, we will ride a very useful vocation that will appear by itself from like nature and spirit, and the parampara will empower us to individuate and occupy something amazing. So I just want to leave that about reconciling nature and spirit and healing this split of life. Is like, look at Saraswati Thakur, look at our master, our like general. He's saying like, nobody is moving the divine design by one hair. And yet he's moving everything he can with he's just off the leash, you know, off the leash, whatever's possible. He just had no limit on like what's his, because he can see the design of where this is going. And therefore he's fearlessly stepping in to occupy an instrumental role, because he already knows its outcome. So we have to start knowing that this is not a war against an enemy. This is just a victory march.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. And we would love to hear follow-up questions and reflections. And like we said, we will further continue this conversation, because it's not something that can be stopped or should be stopped. Any follow-up reflections or questions, you can send it to heytakenote@gmail.com, or you can message myself or Keli directly, and we'd love to hear what you thought and what some of your questions are and what you'd like to hear more of. Tim, I want to thank you again. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for being with us today. Keli, thank you for being here, and thank you for being the provocateur that you are, and in creating these conversations to be so wonderful. I'm deeply grateful to both of you, and I'm deeply grateful to everyone listening. So we will see you. We will see you next Thursday.
Radhe Shyam.
Hari.
Hare Krishna.